All right, great. So really quickly, I wanted to show you this poster basically, and that is like the challenge, like today's poster, quickly introducing our panelists. So basically, this is webinar number 13. This is a SciTech Q&A session number 2. We have our mentor speaker, Siddharth Bhide, who's a SciTech specialist from GFI India, and we have Spurti Ravi, who's basically worked a lot on scale up of recipes, a lot of new product development, a lot of partnerships with co-manufacturers, ingredient partnerships, and really led the product development cycle for GoodMylk now, and has a lot of insights there. Currently, she's the chief of R&D at GoodMylk. And obviously, she has a lot of background and experience in studying food science as well in the US. Aboli, who's obviously our industry professional in the past from DuPont, had a lot of experience in ingredients, protein specifically, and now she's the founder and CSO at Fudtkey Solutions. My apologies for the spelling error there. And then there's also Pankaj, who's been obviously a very active member of the community, being very helpful to a lot of entrepreneurs and stakeholders with their queries. And he's currently the sales manager for the India subcontinent at Biospringer, which is, you all know from our previous webinars what they do. Great. So having said that, really quickly, we'll get started with some of the questions. Siddharth, I'll actually start with you. So before that, I'll just quickly request everyone, all the judges, to get their questions on that I had sent you earlier, so that it's relatively easier for us to just go through them. Great. Would you like to all say a little bit about yourself before we get started with the session? Aboli, Pankaj, and Spurti, maybe in that order. You're on mute.
So hi everyone. Just now we have started in a new innovation center in Thane, Divandi. We having all the pilot scale plant regarding the plant meat and other products also, where the cheese and all this thing, we have all the pilot scale units, and we are working on the different projects right now, and we having the almost 1 ton per day capacity of the cheese and other extruded products also, which is in different segments, and nutraceutical also we have the background. These are the short brief about our lab.
Yeah, thank you. And I think Aboli comes with a lot of experience in ingredients, the functionality, developing plant-based meat, plant-based dairy products, like she said, both at a pilot scale and at a lab scale facility. Pankaj, why don't you go next and quickly share your thoughts?
Hello everyone. As you guys can see, I represent Biospringer. So at Biospringer, we do yeast-based ingredients, and so we are not only trying to sell something which can give you a taste. We are trying to solve many problems which are related to environment, because our product is fermentation based. It is very neat and clean, and also we do our extraction in such a way that we can extract the typical profiles which are actually suited for plant-based meats, and we have had a lot of success globally, which we would like to replicate in ISPIC. And at the moment, I can only say that we have our closest culinary center in Singapore, and if it was not for pandemic, we could have our center up and running in India. But nevertheless, by next year we should have something locally available to you guys, and anything related to product development wherein you guys are facing problems related to off notes or problems related to chicken or mutton flavorings, we are here to help you, and we would love to answer most of your queries today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pankaj. Why don't you go next, Siddharth? I don't know what new you're going to say. Maybe a quick hi.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm glad to be here again today. And I work as the SciTech specialist at the Good Food Institute India. I'm a food scientist by training. So I went to the same school as Spurti actually. We both went to Rutgers University for our masters. Worked a little bit with General Mills, Nestle, and I'm with GFI India now since the past year now.
Awesome. And I'm sure everybody knows that by now. If you don't, you're seriously missing out on the challenge, because that means you haven't really consumed a lot of resources in which Siddharth was a author or a speaker. Awesome. Spurti, why don't you go next and quickly tell us about yourself?
Sure, Shardul. Hi, everyone. I think first off, hats off to you guys for always coming up with like really creative ways to engage the community. And I think this is just such it's a nice way to engage early on, right? I think the students and folks who are young, it's you guys who can really carry this forward and make a huge impact. So I love seeing this initiative, and kudos to GFI for that. And I think Shardul has covered most of what I do. I am currently leading research and development for GoodMylk, where we focus on plant-based dairy specifically. We have a slightly different way in which we're approaching it, maybe to some of the other companies, especially nationally within India. And I think as we get into some of the questions, I'll be able to, tie it into some of my experiences at GoodMylk as well.
Awesome. So without further delay, let's get started. So my first question is actually for Spurti. So what strategies do you usually use to make your products shelf stable? What were the trade-offs involved in order to achieve shelf stability versus say functionality or taste or economics? So, some thoughts around that.
Sure. So I think, whoever has asked this question, a great one, because especially when we think of a country like India, right? Cold chain is really, really nascent. It's pretty much undeveloped at this point. It's a really tough market to crack, and it has a huge impact on your economics or the price that you can charge for your product ultimately. So figuring out creative ways in which you can make your product shelf stable, but still deliver on the sensory attributes and the functionality that you need becomes very, very important. So for us at GoodMylk, our key shelf stable product would be our milk. And for that, obviously we have gone down the route of using thermal processing. So you can always either use preservatives or you can use certain kind of thermal processing methods that help you get that shelf stability that you need. And we've chosen the thermal processing route because preservatives, one, has a bad rep. There's a lot of research backing, especially when it comes to chemical preservatives that are effective. There's a lot of research backing the ill effects from a nutrition and a medical standpoint. And UHT is one of the most widely used sterilization methods that has been present in the industry. So I think especially for a category that we are talking about, which is plant-based dairy, the good thing is that we can borrow a lot of the processing infrastructure that already exists in the country for other products, right? So I think meats are a little trickier. It requires very specific equipment that we don't have a lot of infrastructure around, especially in India. But the good thing for anyone who's looking at dairy or liquid products is there's a lot of infrastructure available. Now, it depends on who you tap into and how you can actually use that infrastructure. So for us, our options when we thought about thermal processing could either be retorting, or it could be a different type of pasteurization. So we've actually tried out both. We went through the process of going through using a retort. And some of the advantages with using a retort is that your packaging can be pretty different. Because when you go onto a shelf today, all the products that you see, especially from a milk perspective or a liquid beverage perspective, is actually in a Tetra Pak. But what you don't see a lot of is bottles. And that's where retort can really help you, because you can come up with some creative pouches and bottles. However, the downfall of retort is it's a much more harsher process. So the time and the duration that the product has to be exposed to for it to get the sterility is much higher. So what that means is you get a lot more off notes, your color is affected, your viscosity is affected, you can get a lot of interactions that you don't want between different components, like your proteins and your starches, etc. So we actually decided to move forward with UHT processing, which is high temperature, short time. So it's a really high temperature that you use for less than 5 seconds on average. The downfall of this method is that you have to have scale. So it's really hard for you to find a UHT processing facility when you want to make really small volumes of products. And that becomes important for startups like you guys with some of the ideas, and even for a company like us. So for us, we had to make a huge investment before we decided that we could start producing our milk using a UHT facility. But what that gave us was much more superior product quality. our product quality from a sensory perspective was far superior to the retort product. And I think ultimately, if we're thinking about how to best service the consumers and give them the best experience, because moving to a plant-based alternative is a stretch enough for most people. So if that first experience that they have is very subpar, especially when you know that you can make it better, then you want to avoid that situation at all costs. So we were able to kind of figure out our back end from a capital perspective, scale perspective. We were able to find a UHT processing facility that worked within the structure we wanted. And it also happened to be completely vegan. So there was no dairy being manufactured in there, which was important because we had to worry less about cross-contamination and things like that. So ultimately, I think that's the method that we had chosen. And it really works for products like milk. Hope that answers the question, Shardul. Did I miss out on any part of it?
That definitely answers the question and much more, goes into depth about a lot of things that I was probably going to ask you after this. So thank you for covering a lot of it. The next question is actually for Pankaj, and this is specifically to the offerings from Biospringer. They ask about Springer 2000 and its availability in India, and maybe some best, products in your portfolio that are currently available in India. And maybe you could talk a little bit about the applications, just in general from Biospringer. You're on mute. Sorry, we'll just have to keep going mute, unmute every time.
Yeah. Okay. So say in terms of product offerings in India, I would say I have at present around 20 products which I continue to offer to my customers. But then there is a standard which I followed when I'm talking about alternative protein sector. So there are basically 3 different ranges which I offer to my customers. So one is the standard range, which we call Springer 1000 range. It's basically a mix of savory and umami notes. Plus we have a range we call Springerless, which is very efficient in off-note masking. We have effectively tested against soya and pea-based proteins, wherein in plant-based meats, you can talk about plant-based dairy. We have seen a lot of efficiency in off-note masking, which makes the profile more cleaner. Now what happens is many a times customers, they come to us, they say, we need a good chicken flavor or a good mutton flavor, or for example, a good chocolate flavor. So what I tell them, until and unless your base is clean, you cannot top it up, or you cannot continue to top it up with flavors. It will only make it taste synthetic. It will only make it taste artificial. So first thing you need to do is get your base right. So once you have decided on your base, be it soya, pea, wheat, or maybe nowadays we are talking about mung bean also. So once your base is decided, we can do something together to make your base clean in terms of masking the off notes. Then comes our umami range, which is Springer 2000 range. Now umami is more relevant when we are talking about meat substitutes, because meat products inherently are rich in umami. So once you are like creating a product which has to taste like meat, you need to take care of incorporating something which can bring back those meaty notes. So Springer 2000 range, we have 3 different products in this range. Based on the level of umaminess you are looking, we can offer those products based on customers' brief or developers' brief. And the final range, what we have, we call Springer Rum, which is actually a combination of a yeast extract plus a natural flavoring. Now what this does is, here I can actually offer you a specific thing. For example, I have a Springer Rum CH, which tastes like cheese, but it's vegan. If you taste it, a little bit of it, you will feel if you're tasting a very concentrated cheese powder. Similarly, I have a Springer Rum chicken, I have a Springer Rum beef, I have a Springer Rum mutton or lamb, I can call it. So there is a range of products under Springer Rum range. And based on your base, based on your end product, we can recommend some combinations, which we have been doing, and we have some ready recipes to share with our customers as well.
Got it. Yeah, very, very interesting. I think the advice about having a relatively flavor-less base, or at least a neutral base, is really important, which sometimes we don't account for while doing our own formulations at lab scale. Awesome. My next question is actually for Aboli. So Aboli, could you tell us a little bit, about Fudtkey and the kind of solutions and turnkey solutions that you provide? for alternative meat segment specifically, the question asks. I think Aboli, yeah, you're on mute.
So regarding Fudtkey solution, we are this. I have worked with the Dow chemicals as it currently is the DuPont. Okay, so I have the 16-year means we have worked with the different segments in the meat analogs and plant-based substances, where basically the chemistry where you have to give the texturization of the major is the in meat industry, how to use the texturization of the product, how you can use the TVP also, but in that how you can do the protein extraction also, which type of extraction. So we are doing in the Fudtkey solution basic R&D also, where the extraction of plant extraction, we are working on the milk products where the different type of milks in the plant segments, which is not affecting on the, which is a parallel same like milk, whatever the nutritional profile should be the milk, it should not be hamper the milk any alteration. It should be similar like profile, clean palate, clean for palate. And it's an majorly, if you see in India, there is a major problem is you can see milk is normal milk. If you say non regular milk is having the different applications. The people are not drinking only milk. The applications are very important to the Indian subcontinental. If you say the ghee and whatever the sweets, anything, if you come from morning to evening, night, there is a different type of products people eat for the per capita consumption. If you see, India is the second largest dairy industry in these things. So we are having the extraction of the different extraction. We have developed different extraction methods of the plant extraction methods, where clean labels. Basically, if you saying the people are using the TCP and other ingredients also, where having the, it is not a clean label. I think day before yesterday only the news has come for the UK market. The alternative milk substances they are rejected, so many companies are rejected and all these things. It is very difficult to you how to give the clean labeling, whatever the as per the our FSSL laws and all these things. We take the precaution, we check the feasibility before taking any project. What we do the feasibility, technical feasibility, whether we can do or not do, whether this feasibility is there or not do. So before any commitment to the customer also, we do our homeworks, means we do the trials, basic trials, basic R&D, basic research. And there is a different type of research available. Since there is a first stage, second stage, there is an comparative analysis, global analysis, what type of products is there, is a stage gate process. We are having the stage gate process, a different type of processes. So first we give the feasibility, whether it is any commitment to the customer, we do the feasibility test, whether it is okay or not. The majorly in India is the cost of, if you say milk, if you want to take the milk cost is 26 rupees kg liter. And plant-based is sustainability is the major issue. If you're not comparing the cost of the comparison in the costing, if you're not fit in the costing, you are not getting the margins, you will not sustain in market. One is the application. You should be focused on your application, whether your product is feasible or not, whether your customers, even your small customer, middle class. Now see, plant-based means is not higher class. It should be in the middle class also. People, they can feasibility. So they should also drink this type of milk. Because if you see, there is a market research, we have seen that there is a problems in India. People don't want to drink. Even I am not drinking any milk. Why? Because it's not the antibiotics and these things, but it's in lactose intolerance. So many people we have seen there is a lactose intolerance are there. So milk is the very huge market in the as compared to the meat and all these things. First, will everyone, if you say the 100 people, so then 50 to 60 people, middle class family, I'm not saying higher, middle class family, 50 to 60 people, they want to change their milk first. They don't want to drink the milk. This is an statistical data we have seen in India. Even India wants different. People don't know what is a plant-based milk. But if you say that traditionally also we having some products, there is in if you say in Vidarbha, means in Maharashtra, there is in Vidarbha sector is there. They're having the specific milk, ambil, they called as ambil, different type of, if you go in the south, there is a different type of milk is they call, this is extracted from the rice, fermented rice and all these things, different type of milk. So if you go to the Assam and other places, it is having the already data is there, but it is the assorted data. You have to collect it and you have to focus on the what is the traditional food products, and we can do that is in different packaging and all these things. So we are doing in the traditional way also. We are giving the nutritional benefit also, because all protein profiles you should get it, because milk is such a product. If you say milk is having very good in the protein content also, all the nutritional values also. So we can get it probiotic also and prebiotic also from the milk. So it is in complete portfolio of the
I think that gives a great overview of the plant-based dairy category and the innovation involved in it. There was one more question about the complexity of different products that could be developed in plant-based dairy area, the costing and timelines. We'll get to that. So before that, really quickly, Spurti, the next question is for you. How do we, so, there are different categories like ice creams, yogurts, just, packaged milk. So can you talk a little bit about profit margins across these different categories, and how can a startup who is looking at a niche segment to start with the, in the plant-based dairy segment, in terms of recovery of the cost of fixed equipments that they're putting up? So ice cream, as I know, the margins are highest, but then maybe the production is a little bit trickier. So on those lines, could you throw some light?
Sure, Shardul. So I think that is actually a very generic question to answer, because it goes down to the business model that each company has, right? And ultimately depends on, if you have X amount of capital, how do you envision your brand to be? What do you want your product to be? Do you want it to be a premium product with a small niche market? Do you want to be a mass market product with a small margin? So there are lots of things to consider when one actually decides this. But I think, in my opinion, if you ask me, I think I would love to see a lot more plant-based markets that come in the mass market segment with lower margins, only because I think price is a barrier currently to entry into this market. And it isn't to say it's always going to be this way, because that's going to change with scale, etc. But I think that the more conscious the company is, especially upfront when you're launching a new product, not to go really premium, is I think what is going to get you the traction that you need. Because if the price is so high that your consumer is not even willing to try your product, then it's pointless. You're not going to get feedback. You can't improve it. You can't change it. So it's kind of like you've hit a wall at that point. However, if your price is, I would say, reasonable for that market category, because again, it's different for milk, it's different for ice cream, it's different for yogurt. I think if it's reasonable within the category, by doing some kind of marketplace analysis, seeing what are the other products out there, what is an average dairy counterpart at, what is your premium segment in that? Because I'll take milk as an example, right? So we can look at average milk that all of us get from cooperatives on a daily basis, which is probably going to be 30 to 40 rupees max per liter. And then if you go into a premium segment of milk, there are now farms that are selling organic milk directly to consumers to their houses. So we're talking about around a 75 rupee per liter involved there, because they come in better packaging like glass, they don't use plastic, and there are a lot of factors that influence that cost. And then when we've looked at our pricing, we've always wanted to be as low cost as possible, where we could maintain our margins, but at the same time have a sustainable business. And Aboli mentioned this, if you cannot sustain your business, it's pointless, because you're not running a non-profit organization here. If your business cannot survive, you don't have a product, you can't make an impact in this market. So you have to think about it with a different lens. As much as we'd love to give our products out for free and encourage more people to try it, it's just not commercially sustainable, and it's not what is going to make an impact long term. So when we've kind of gone through our costing, what we think about is what technologies can we use that bring that barrier down, right? When we think about shelf stable, our supply chain costs come down drastically. So GoodMylk has a curd, but we also have milk that is shelf stable and curd that is refrigerated. It's been hard for us to actually expand our distribution into other cities with respect to our curd, because cold chain is very, very nascent. It's the cost involved is much higher. There are not a lot of people who do it really well. So are we willing to take on all that capex? So I think as a company, it's important to be strategic about which product you enter with, and your pricing model will actually depend on what what category you're servicing. So do a thorough research on that category, especially from a business economical sense. As like I said, don't try to be charitable with this, right? I'm going to push you to be more capitalist as you think about this question, because only if your business is sustainable, you think about the channels in which your product is going to go through. One comment I do want to make here when I talk about channels is we are used to the official, pretty standard retail model. So you have your modern trade, which could be your Nature's Basket, your food hall, etc. You have your smaller convenience stores and kirana stores, and now e-commerce is what is really taken off. So most people are ordering via a big basket and Amazon, etc. The costs associated with e-commerce is very, very different from retail. It's just the model and how it works. So I would highly encourage people to study these different channels, understand all the line items involved in your P&L, what is going to contribute to that cost. Is there a distributor margin? How much does Amazon take? How much does Flipkart or Big Basket take? Like, understand all these factors and then come up with a price that is sensible. And with scale, you can bring down the price from a processing standpoint and a cost, from a cost of ingredient standpoint, a little. Plant-based is still not there where we can buy ingredients in bulk at nominal prices because we don't have subsidies or anything like that for ingredients involved. So keep a little bit of buffer, but be very, very practical and pragmatic as you build your cost structure out.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I mean, an amazing answer, just telling us about how even a scientist in a position like Spurti is in developing new products, you have to really think of the business side of things, the practicality, the feasibility, the top lines, bottom lines, all of it. So makes a lot of sense, Spurti, and thank you so much for the detailed advice. My next question is for Siddharth, actually. It's actually directed towards Siddharth, but I'm sure others would be adding to this. The role of gelatinization in plant milk extraction. Its effects, is it desirable or undesirable in product development? So Siddharth, you want to get started? Siddharth, are you there? Maybe some network issues. So why don't we start again with Spurti and then we'll go to Aboli and then come back to Siddharth.
So I think I'm not sure about the person, what lens they've asked this question from. But when I think of gelatinization, I'm mainly thinking of starches at this point. I'm not really thinking about proteins because we would refer to it as denaturation when proteins break down. So I'll address the starch component of it. And I think when Siddharth comes back on, he may have some different perspectives to add on to this. But I think it's actually desirable, right? So a lot of times when we think about any interactions between different ingredients, we immediately, we try and avoid those interactions. But I think it's also important for product developers and folks like us in R&D to think about how can we leverage those interactions to our benefit. So, put a different lens and think about it differently. So gelatinization is really, really important because if your starches are not well hydrated, then you don't gain certain functionalities that you require, whether that's from a thickener perspective, whether that's from a stabilization perspective, whether that's to actually give you viscosity and body. So there are a lot of pros involved with the whole concept of gelatinization. So I think I definitely see it as a benefit. I think we need to think about how to use it more creatively from different plant-based raw materials and sources to actually cater to some of the functionalities that we're looking for, especially in the plant-based dairy space.
Makes sense. Siddharth, anything to add here?
No, sorry, I missed some part of that answer. But I do agree with Spurti. It's about the approach, what we take. Traditionally, because milk, if you see, milk has fat, milk has proteins, and milk has, I believe, carbohydrates, which are just sugars, but not complex carbohydrates as starches. So as again, like Spurti has a lot of like actual real life product development experience. But one of the first things what I would try is not to have starch, but rather to have just simple sugars in. But then again, as Spurti rightly mentioned, sometimes you need the body and for that you need proper starch, hydration, etc. So these are some of the tools to play with, and you could compare different formulations and then check what is desirable for your product.
Yeah, makes sense. So Aboli, could you tell us a little bit about different timelines involved in plant-based product development, especially for meat, dairy, and seafood categories, and maybe just focusing on meat and dairy, and you can just give us some comparables about the kind of R&D processes exist, the kind of scale-up processes that exist, the timelines usually there, and also maybe if you could throw some general insights on the costs of doing that, maybe with an external consultancy like yourselves, or even if people are trying to do it on their own.
In case of the product, see, each product is having that there is a different specification, different approaches is there. Depend on that one, we are doing the stage, as I earlier said, that the stage gate process, we have to understand first the feasibility of the project, whether what is their, how much is their turnkey project, or whether this, how much their production scale, what is the market they want to capture, and all these things depend on that when we have to specify their what is the cost is they want to involve in that one. On that basis, we having the internal process, questionnaire process, where we give the questions to the customer, we ask this, exchange so many mails, what is expectation they have. Excuse me. So each and every, so normally first 1 to 2 months we ask the question only, the what is the expectation, what is the market overlook, how they want to look their product, whether they are clear to be the what product they want, what is there is a competitor available, or they want to out of the box any specific product. Even meat also there is a specific, it's not, people will not come, they want only the like different type of meat. In the meat also there is an chicken pieces or leg pieces they want to launch, or they want the burger patties, but which is the base, they don't want gluten free, they want gluten free, they want some they don't want soya also, and they don't want to use pea also, because see, they want to create their IP also. If they want to if suppose IP creation, it takes time, minimum 3 to 6 months is the minimum timeline comes. And whether there is a deep science approaches is there, different plant-based milk is having the 3 to 6 months, depend upon the how to approach. They don't want oats milk, they don't want this type of milk, they want to create the IP. The people are whatever the people are coming, they want to create their IP, new innovations. It's not the regular product, me too product. Okay. And so it depend upon the product to product is it changes, maybe the three start from 3 months to 6 months. Some people takes the 3 months to 9 months also, because a deep science approach. In case of the seafood, there is in seafood is a very challenging things. You want to give the
just to clarify, what do you mean by deep science approach?
Deep science approach means, see, if you see in the fish category, the fish is what type of texture they want, which type of application they want to go. See, even you can make the base within the 3 months, but application takes times. Okay. Basically, India, as I told you, even you can take the milk also. The people want the same milks. They want to use for a curd. They want to use for the paneer. They want to do for all the similar like milk only. Whatever the characteristic they want to use in same characteristic in the milk only. They want to extract the cream from that one. So regular milk, whatever the regular milk application, same application they want to make it. They want to make chas, anything out of the curd and all these things. The very simple method, but it takes time. It's not easy to give you the clean things also. If you take the milk also, same milk, you can't do the curd. There is so many. It's just now you have said the gelatinization. Here plays the gelatinization role. Okay, the major thing, application, if you break down your starches in the small molecules or whatever, there is a problems of the texture improvement. It will not give you the texture properly. Some products you need a breakdown. Some products you don't want to break down also your products. So it is depend upon the product to product is varies. It's not the same things to everything. So it takes 3 to 6 months, sometimes 9 months also. It's not, and commercial pilot scale over the 3 months, but commercial scale take 3 months. And you're launching, your packaging, it's all our activities are the parallel activities. Not 3 to 6 months is a minimum requirement of any projects.
Got it. My next question is actually for Pankaj, and this talks about what are the best sources of fish flavor for plant-based seafood, and also if people are trying to find the best and the cheapest omega-3 fatty acid sources, do you have any solutions or ingredients in mind? How can people go on about finding such ingredients from a functionality and nutrition perspective, the best ones out there?
See, Shardul, in terms of omega-3 fatty acids, I would say even soya can give you a good output in terms of omega-3 fatty acids, but you would have to speak to the maybe supplier if they can provide you a certain grade which can deliver you good. Because if you go as it is for an ingredient which can give you omega-3 fatty acids as it is, I think that's not possible. It comes as a package, so it will come along with some protein portion. Though you can see there are some natural sources there. People have tried chia seeds, people have tried canola, so, and these products are commercially available as well. And if needed, I can guide to the correct suppliers. There are some small time suppliers who can help with these ingredients. And in terms of flavorings, like I was mentioning, we do have some standard range of our solutions which can elevate the fishy notes in particular. Because what we have seen when people are trying to develop fish alternatives, I mean plant-based proteins, wherein people are talking about fish alternatives, they try to use some seaweeds which are actually very rich in fishy notes. So it just needs a balancing, and coupled with some umami solutions from Biospringer, we can create a good product in terms of fish analogs.
Yeah, awesome. So I think what I learned from that is whenever you're looking at such challenges, whether you want that ingredient or whether you want to create an IP in producing that omega-3 fatty acid rich ingredient for the plant-based seafood space, you really have to think of its delivery, right? Like Pankaj was saying, it's usually sold in a mixed format. Yeah, so I think there are opportunities on both sides, and I think I've learned something new as well here. So I'm just following up a question again for Pankaj. From a process point of view, is nutritional yeast actually more expensive to produce than baker's yeast, or is it just priced more because of its superior functionality, taste, and nutritional profile?
Okay, so this answer, it's actually two ways. So it's a mix of process plus a mix of fortification what we do at our end. So first I'll explain what is baker's yeast. So, yeast is basically a fungus which is Saccharomyces cerevisiae. So when you are taking out the extract portion from living yeast by inactivating it or drying it, so that taste portion is called yeast extract. Now the regular yeast extract is always called baker's yeast or baker's yeast extract. People get confused with baker's yeast and baker's yeast extract. A baker's yeast would come with so many impurities, some of the products or some of the ingredients which are not actually responsible for taste. What we are talking about as an extract is a product which is responsible for taste enhancement. That's why it is considered as a natural flavor enhancer. So a baker's yeast extract is the one which people should be talking about. Now, a baker's yeast extract, how it is different from a nutritional yeast. A nutritional yeast is something wherein maybe during the process we can talk. We are fortifying it with maybe some essential vitamins or maybe some micronutrients. So it makes it more nutritional, because otherwise a yeast extract is usually rich in proteins only, and some maybe vitamin B complex vitamins. But when we are talking about nutritional yeast, we give a guaranteed claims, like you can claim vitamin B12 so much milligram, you can claim vitamin B9 so much milligram. So that's why nutritional yeast, in terms of processing, yes, it is different, and in terms of deliverables or in terms of nutrition claims, it is different.
And cost wise, like the production cost of either of those, how different are those? Do you have any?
Um, it's not much, but it's already dependent on scale. You remember Spurti said, when we negotiate our prices with some of our maybe partners, we always talk about scale. And most of my these products are either imported from France or US, and looking at the logistic costs and the import clearance and everything, definitely the prices they go by certain number. And if I have to give a nutritional yeast extract would cost maybe 1.3 to 1.4x than a standard yeast extract.
Got it. Yeah, great. That's a great response. Thank you so much. Aboli, my next question is actually for you, and then others can also give their perspective on this. This talks about, let's just say, a rapid R&D process, or when a client comes to you, or when somebody's thinking of the different products they could make, and they have a goal in mind that I want to achieve certain cost and at the same time a certain nutritional profile. So are there theoretical ways, without actually doing the product development and actually doing the nutritional testing, are there any rapid secondary literature review processes, or just I don't know, any tricks or tips there that people could follow to better arrive at the closest possible end product, so that they can start working with that, and then they save a lot of cost and time doing it?
Yeah, there is we call as a feasibility test. We do that feasibility test before anything. So you want to do it, you can do the feasibility test. There is theoretical possibilities, are there ways and out. What is literature survey? We do there is so first we are saying any project we are taking one and a half month and 2 months. It goes for the only the literature and feasibility theoretical. This is in all our theoretical work. It's not the work of the any actual practical work. Okay, but we check the any whether it is this nutritional dense product, or it is whether you can get these products or not, whether this packaging is sustainability or not, whether your manufacturing third party whether available or not, which machine is you required, what is the cost you have to involve. So
That would be for the entire project. So let's just specifically take an example of a new product development cycle, right? Can you tell us, other than literature review, what constitutes the feasibility test for you? Like, what are the parameters should one look at? I mean, yeah, obviously going and finding some review papers, this advice we've been giving all of the teams throughout our process. Yeah.
So we take this is literature survey is the one part. There is a comparative analysis. What is the market trend is going on? What is the product specification you are looking? What is the market gap is in between that? So we work on the gap also, and what is you can do it in next also. What is people are not doing? So all are doing in the one phase. So we call as an feasibility test. So what will be the cost in your ingredient cost? What is the tentative recipe of your product? What will be your nutritional profile you can look after? What is the demo packaging? How you look your products also? How you want to look your product? Which type of packaging you can sustainable? Transportation cost. Each and everything we do in the feasibility testing. So that is in feasibility testing is not the only for the literature survey of, if suppose the plant milk, if somebody want to make the any plant milk, any specific nutritionally dense or something like that one. It's not only the product. Okay, is in literature survey is only not science direct. Okay, it's in different approaches. Whether your machinery available, whether you can do this process is in India or not, or whether is the costing is feasibility, the tentative formulation, what are the problems are coming in the SWOT analysis, what will be the in the future If suppose what are the nutritional effect on that, what is the FSSAI effect on that, what are the global changes are going to, whether raw material availability is there or not. Yours means there is a tentative, isn't even what I'm saying, that if you want to take a fish, so whether you are in India, whatever the texturized protein, or whether there is an wet extrusion technology in India, nobody is having. Okay, currently is nobody is having the wet extrusion. So without wet extrusion, your texture or smoothness and that sponginess and uh, that texture, you won't get in the fishy note. You won't get it in TVP. Using the only dry TVP, you won't get the texture of the fishy. Okay, the fishy also, there is a specific grade of the proteins, you how to use it and you how to extrude that technology, and then you will get that smoothness, texture. And fishy note you can get it in other things. There is a Biospringer, they're giving very good, but as they want, but texture is the major issue, na. The major issue is the texturization. People want the feel also very good. Without texture, the product is nothing.
Yeah. So on that exact note, actually, since you're a texture expert as well, Aboli, can you tell us about some methods of achieving maybe that flaky seafood texture or the really meaty texture from plant-based meat products, which do not use high moisture extrusion methods? Are there any other ways of playing with ingredients or low cost processing methods which can achieve probably not the exact same replication, but maybe 60%, 70%, 80% there, to get started with, instead of
Yes.
investing?
Yeah, there isn't technologies available. How you handle the which type of texturize, even TVP also there is in lots of grades available. What is the water absorption rate is there? What type of protein content is available? What is your final product you want to look at? There is an different type of centrifugation of the product. How you can do the processing, pre-processing of your handling of the pre-processing of ingredient. And there is an even if you want to meet it texture, there should be the that flake should be the proper, it should be smooth in the texture, it should not look like fibrous. Okay, so it depend upon the technology, but when you open that one, it should be juicy in the texture. Different, each and every product, there is a different TVP available, and you how to choose that grade, and you how to use it. Otherwise there is a technology, there is a cooking methods also, different cooking method you can use, and enzyme treatments are available. So you can use some enzymes and some fermentation technology. You can get that texture also, low cost benefit also you can get it. It is not the only the extrusion, but 60-70% you can get in the different technology is available.
Yeah, so centrifugation, enzyme treatments, pre-processing of some of the ingredients that are going.
Yeah, fermentation is there, some fermentation process. Some people, some product, if you do the fermentation also, you will get the very good texture, but there isn't some off notes comes, so you have to avoid that off notes. There is specific temperature condition you have to use it, so you can do it. What type of product you are doing, depend on that one, there is process you can do. It's called as hurdle technology. See, it's not only one technology you have to use different multiplication technology, multiplication factors, and then you will get the desired texture. Now is a new technology, you also know about the shear cell technology, that also the good technology. The similar way you can make it in small scale also, that type of technology, very simple and very powerful, you can do it.
Yeah, I think very interesting point that you mentioned was hurdle technology, and just using different parameters and different processes, different ingredients, and again, pre-processing of those ingredients, and kind of laying it out together so that the end product has a really,
Yeah.
individual steps can be really cost effective. So yeah, that's a great way of thinking about it. I'm sure there's some literature around it.
Yeah,
So
Shardul, I would like to add something here. I agree with Aboli. It's I would say 75 to 80% is definitely process and the manufacturing operations to get the right texture. And we do have some solutions which can complement the texture, because the range what we talk about here is a yeast extract which comes with cell wall. cell wall, I think Siddharth would agree with me. It's again a very complex component of a yeast extract, and we intentionally keep this as a part of the yeast extract because it provides the complexity to the products what we add. And we did some tests at our culinary centers based in Europe and Asia, and we found the moisture retention to be more. So the meaty products what were made out of by using those ingredients were definitely better in taste in terms of crunchiness, which is we call meaty crunchiness, and the juiciness was more. So as if you were having a real meat. So
Wow.
yes, there are some solutions through ingredient route also, but definitely 80% has to be your process. It cannot be 100% ingredients.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, so a combination of process and ingredients and pre-processing treatments, like in a hurdle technology kind of a format, could give you, and you can probably arrive at really good textures. Siddharth, anything to add? Yeah, I don't have a lot of specific questions for you since we covered that in the last session, but feel free to jump in anywhere, you know.
No, I agree with both Aboli and Pankaj. I think they have covered the aspects really well. Yeah, it's a mix of everything, like texture, flavor, and the consumer is not going to have the product again if either of texture or flavor is not right. So both need to be taken into considerations. And as Aboli and Pankaj mentioned, there are solutions available in the market for both.
Yeah. Thank you so much. My next question is again open for all of you. Basically, it's about working with new ingredients, and again, like the focus on clean label. Sometimes, have you faced problems with, I don't know, a certain ingredient not being there in FSSAI list, and then what do you really do to get that approved? Has anybody gone through that journey and can tell about that?
So I think
Spurti, yeah.
Shardul, maybe I'll start off with this. So I think, for us, especially in the plant-based dairy space, thankfully, we haven't had to work with ingredients that actually are novel, especially for FSSAI. So I think it's about using existing ingredients, but in different formats with different processes involved from an ingredient standpoint that make it a lot more compatible for our applications. What I will say though, when it comes to some of these more innovative, creative ingredients, is a lot of this work, and I think Pankaj can actually shed some light on this, but a lot of this work is happening outside of India. So whenever I am exploring new ingredients from a flavor perspective, like he said, to either mask some off notes or to actually increase the creaminess of my product, to reduce the sugar, or if I'm trying to use proteins that just work better from a flavor perspective, a lot of this is coming from outside of India. So what I see as a bigger challenge is not getting novel ingredients actually certified or approved by the FSSAI, but is actually how do we make it commercially available within the Indian subcontext? Because I have been in situations where I've used some ingredients that were absolutely fantastic, but from a cost perspective and from a supply chain perspective, it would just never work for our product lines here. So I think that's what I see as a challenge when it comes to some of the more creative out there ingredients, is how much room do you have to play with in terms of cost and in terms of your supply chain?
Yeah, very interesting. Any perspectives here?
Yeah, see, if you want to use the clean labels, there is a process in FSSAI also and provision also. You have to apply that one. There is some ingredients, like if you see so many enzymes now, the enzymes treatments are going on, fermentation processes going on. There is a processing aids using the people, but in FSSAI also not mention some of the ingredients. Okay, that category has not mentioned. So you have to apply that one and give the solution. It is in registration process. You have to take NOC from the FSSAI. They will give you FSSAI. Already we have done these things. There is a clean label, some citrus fibers. We use some of the products, or some cellulose fibers, which is not application in different category. But we take there is a global, what are the codex standards are there, FDA standard, European laws are there, that there is a clean label. If you say, for example, I'm telling you pectin in India, there is no clean label in India. But if you go in Europe, there is a clean label. Okay, the reason the situation is going, it's not the in India, but India is having certain there is a clean label definition is different. If you go in the Europe, there is a clean label definition. If you guar gum in Europe, there is a clean label. There is a no any things is you don't have to mention as an guar gum as an there is a E number or nothing. It's a clean label. You can claim as a clean label. There is an, if you say Europe clean label definition is different, and India subcontinental definition means clean label and natural is a definition entirely different. Even natural definition also is different in India. You can't write the natural word. Even milk also, if you are doing the processing, you can't write natural word. Okay, in natural, pure, fresh. These are the regulatory. Even traditional also you can't write the word. There isn't something regulation. You are saying the traditionally made product. It is you have to give the 10-year data. Before 10 years, you have done these traditionally methods or what is in your source of methods and all these things. Then only you can recommend these things. So there is a way of the process clean label. You have to use the certain ingredients. You can apply to the government. They will approve. Maybe the Pankaj know that this, they also face some ingredients, importing the ingredients. Even they write the ingredient in the ingredient list. You have to mention all the ingredients. Even there is a minor ingredient, also some product fine, they will not clear your consignment. So you have to approach. There is a simple way. It's nowadays the FSSAI is so simple. You can apply online your FSSAI license or anything. So you can online apply. There is no any there is no any gaps or something like that one. Earlier was the process, but now is in very simple and very systematic. They're doing in the online also. Within the 15 minutes, you will get there is a registration number, and then they will come and check your facilities there or not. What are the documents? Because I have faced the problems when I was in DuPont. I mean, that time we want to do all the clean labels and all the processes. So we know even after that, I have started my own business. That time also we applied so many times NOC from my customers. There is an even nowadays, if you say the meat, the paneer analog. So see, paneer analog, people will say, okay, paneer analog is there, definition. But there is you can call as a cottage cheese also. Okay, there is a definition, different definition also there. So you can, there is a definition also. You have to take the approval. NOC is there. You won't get it direct license to customer. I mean, FSSAI. There is a process. They will give you. There is a. It takes 15 instead of 15 days. They will give you take a 1.5 months. But if you are clear on the data and all these things, they will give you. My think is that way.
Absolutely, and it's a full-time job, right? Aboli knows a lot of this because Ashish is also focusing on IP and regulatory laws. A lot of the times, like coming from a food science background, I know my colleagues who studied with me. Now their only job is studying FSSAI manuals and implementing the standards in a specific corporate. Full-time job.
Even there is a FSSAI team is different. Fortification team also there is a different. Means FSSAI is having so many divisions. If you only fortification, there is a one division is there. Okay, so different division, they will help you in the proper way if you want to take the clean label and all these things. But Indian regulations is entirely different. If you go for Europe is different. Every country is different regulations.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so I think just carefully studying that before, thinking on going on about doing your new product development process, just taking that approach where you're kind of understanding what the end product would look like, and then just making sure everything's compliant to FSSAI standards is very important. Okay, great. So my next question is actually, anything to add there?
I mean, like Spurti and Aboli said that since we are at the receiving end, and definitely we come across these kind of situations. I think it's now more often. It used to be very rare in the past, but what happens is as soon as we saw some opportunity to bring some of our natural flavorings into the market, which are relevant to the vegan category, I can see there are some challenges because FSSAI has its own certain set of standards, which sometimes is a mix of US FDA plus a European regulations, which we call EU regulations. Now, one very classic example is thermal process flavorings. Siddharth would know that. Now, there is no way I can classify thermal process flavorings as per FSSAI because it is nowhere mentioned. Now, very simple context behind it is a mix of what we do at our end is a yeast extract and a Maillard reaction based flavor. Now, if you see Maillard reaction is not a natural process as it is, it does not exist in the nature. So it's basically a synthetic process. So it's basically a crossover of synthetic process, which is we are applying on a natural product. So as Aboli mentioned, see, FSSA does not have something which is currently prevalent in the market to justify our product inclusion. But then there is always what they say, they can issue a clarification in their standards and try to include our products. So they are supportive, and sometimes the time taken is sometimes 2 months, 3 months, but it does happen. It's all that the ones who are promoting their ingredients, be it novel ingredients, they need to be very clear, and they need to share the entire data backing their claims. So we do face these kind of issues, and then there are solutions to this as well.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's about it from the questions submitted via the form. So we can now open it up for live Q&A. So anybody who would like to ask question to either Spurti, Aboli, Siddharth, or Pankaj, you can go on now. Just raise your hands, and then I can quickly allow you to speak, or you can do that yourself. And just to answer Shailesh's question from the chat box, we've discussed this time and again that the context of this specific challenge is different. So it's theoretical. You don't have to necessarily develop products. Again, like I think secondary literature, speaking to people who worked on those products in the industry, just understanding the R&D requirements for those ingredients, maybe from early stage researchers who are playing with these ingredients in different labs. Those could be some ways of validating your, whatever claims you're making in the proposal. Any questions? While you're thinking of those questions, I will take a few of those right after getting back. Again, I'll take a couple of questions from the form. Yeah, so I don't know, like you covered this, Spurti, but basically people are talking about the MOQs, doing Tetra Pak, using UHT. All of these are cost-intensive processes. Are there any more simpler methods you have tried and then probably decided that it's not working out? Cheaper methods, economical methods?
I mean, there are definitely more economical methods, but there are trade-offs, right? That's what we were addressing before, is like you can go for retorts. It's basically a batch process. It works out much better. And it actually, it lends some benefits for certain products where a longer cook time is more beneficial than a shorter cook time. But most of those products, I mean, don't fit into the categories that I'm working on right now. So, so I think that unfortunately, with when it comes to using existing infrastructure, if you want to create your own pilot plant, if you want to go leverage an academic university, or let's say in my case it would be like an NDRI which exists in Bangalore, and use some of their facilities, from a prototyping perspective, definitely you can go ahead. But I think when it comes to the manufacturing aspect of it, then you will have to look at a certain scale to make it to enable you to use these kind of processing technologies. Unfortunately, the economics of these technologies work out in a way that if you did have a smaller scale, it would never make sense for you to run it. The numbers wouldn't make sense. So I think, I think scale will work against some of these, some of these products. However, when it comes to R&D though, there are a lot of options available. I don't think that you have to run, let's say, if you go to a UHT processing facility, they may ask you to produce a minimum 10,000 liters. Now, if you're a new product, including me at this stage of GoodMylk, even with the backing that we have, I'm not going to spend money for 10,000 liters of any trial product that I'm making. So there are multiple ways in which you can actually, do trial products, do your consumer testing, leverage academic universities, leverage pilot plants, work with some of our ingredient suppliers, and utilize the equipment that they have. An interesting trick that I figured out recently on one of the products that we're working on, where it's been impossible for me to find a contract manufacturer that's going to work at our scale, which is not small, but it isn't large by any means, was that I actually started looking for equipment manufacturers. So who manufactures equipment for these specific types of products, right? And I found this amazing pilot facility where we have to pay a small fee to rent it out. And I can go to that equipment manufacturer, do my trials, try a couple different types of products, put it out for consumer testing, and come back. So I think R&D, since this is about innovation and prototyping and trying, there are a lot of ways in which you can tap into existing infrastructure.
Yeah, absolutely. You just have to kind of locate that piece of infrastructure wherever it's present, relatively easier to do so in plant-based dairy compared to plant-based meat, like Spurti was telling earlier. And then obviously these guys are also looking to rent it out or lease it out, or kind of just make some sort of revenue over their investments. So they're happy to partner up in different ways.
And I think curiosity, right, Shardul? So they're also curious to see what new products can be made with our equipment. They would have never thought about it, but some of us here are thinking about using equipments differently. So I think it actually feeds into their system as well, because they learn something new. It shows them a category that they could potentially service in the future. So it's definitely a win for them as well.
Another great point. Like, I think that is a big advantage for startups in this area, because you're doing something so innovative and something so new. You could always use that to, use other people's time, resources, infrastructure, and kind of do a joint project, share your insights, maybe share your data to an extent, etc., etc. So all of those things are very, very helpful. So next question was actually for Pankaj, but anybody could take it. If we flash freeze a product, especially from a plant-based meat or plant-based seafood perspective, and then ask the retailers, supermarkets to defrost it before putting it on their shelves. Obviously, this comes from a perspective of understanding what textural and flavor losses are there in, thawing, etc., etc. So if anybody has worked on similar products, maybe also some insights on the frozen products like plant-based meats or plant-based seafood, and some issues with thawing or bad supply chain, because we don't have a great cold chain in India. Is that question clear? Anybody would like to take it?
Yeah, Siddharth, Shardul, I can maybe partially answer this, because if you see freezing, and definitely if not plant-based meals, if you are talking about plant-based meats, they're essentially having some fat into them, and it can be any oil or any fat system what they are incorporating into it. So it has a tendency to turn rancid over a period of time. We can call it 1 month, we can call it 3 months, we can call it 6 months. So there is definitely a loss of flavor, what we say. So it's not essentially the loss of inherent flavor of the product. It's sometimes the overpowering fatty acids or the rancidity of the product, which tends to overcome the original flavor of the product. And that's where how smartly you're using your fatty acid system or the oil system, and try to find maybe a combination which can give you a better shelf life over a period of time, and then try to design a product which can be more flavorful. And if you talk specifically to our products, they are stable over a period of time, and they are irrespective of any processing conditions. It can be freezing, it can be drying, or it can be heat conditions. So there are some questions which people put to me, that we are frying our product, and do you think there'll be a flavor loss? So I tell them there is always a 10 to 15% gap, which I can consider from a lab scale to upscale, which you have to do at a commercial scale, but not more than that, because it would then be a loss of everything if you would have to up it up by 50%. So that margin, if you can consider, and you can try to design a recipe which has maybe a fatty acid system or a fat system which can be more stable over a period of time, the processing conditions would not be much impacting the flavor of your product. So, and obviously my answer would limit to ingredients only. There can be some textural or maybe some other things which either Siddharth or Aboli can try to answer.
Yeah, Siddharth, do you want to quickly add here?
Yeah, again, this is very specific, but in my experience, I've seen that freeze thaw cycle is usually not very good for the product. It causes this thing called syneresis, and because the ice crystals, essentially because of multiple freeze thaw cycles, now they become free water, and your product could feel soggy. But there are solutions out there in the market. There are gums, there are starches which are freeze thaw stable. Second thing is also the rate of freezing. In general, you would want to freeze the product as fast as possible versus as slow as possible. And that's why flash freezers or blast freezers, as they call it, in some manufacturing facilities are preferred over just putting it in -20 Celsius freezers and letting them freeze over time. Uh, because a lot of times also what happens is all these products are usually on a pallet. So your products on the outside of the pallet might get frozen much faster, whereas the center could even take a day to completely freeze. So all these issues are there. Again, there are solutions that the industry offers from a textural standpoint such that it is still good, and sometimes freezing is necessary too, right? It just depends how you counter the effects, any negative effects that freeze thaw process might have.
Yeah, anybody would like to add that? If not, we'll move to the next question. Spurti.
I think, Shardul, I think the question also, part of the question was, can they actually freeze it from a supply chain perspective, but then have it be sold as a cold chain product, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. That's sort of how I interpreted the question.
You flash freeze a product, and that kind of improves the shelf life. And assuming that you find a cold chain to deliver it, can there be products where the end retailer or the supermarket seller kind of dethaws your product and then sells it in that format, like a fresh kind of a thing?
Right.
Yeah.
And I definitely think, this is actually one of the methods that we had used in the US, is if we can actually lengthen the shelf life of some of our products back end. So that comes from a supply chain perspective, but front end to the consumer, it's always going to be a refrigerated product. But that also means, to the points that Siddharth brought up, especially about the freeze thaw cycles, syneresis, etc., that it means that as long as your product is formulated in a way that it can withstand that, at least if ideally they're expecting one freeze thaw cycle, assume that it's going to be 3 freeze thaw cycles at least. So build it to that level of robustness. But if you can do that, then I think from a supply chain setup perspective, it's definitely possible to have frozen products be sold as refrigerated products.
Got it. Yeah, thank you for that perspective. I think we'll take a couple of questions from the Q&A section now. So Sanjog Gita from Plant-Based team is basically talking about plant-based dairy, specifically millet-based dairy, I think. And their product is the water and millet ratio and some other parameters that they're trying to optimize for, but they don't know exactly what key parameters they should really optimize for when they're going for maybe a kitchen scale approach. Right now, that's what most of the participants can do, even if they're trying prototypes because of COVID and the nature of the challenge. So maybe Spurti and Aboli, if you have any perspectives here, even Siddharth. So the parameters that while extracting milk from plant sources, one should keep in mind, even for optimizing the stability and the end consistency of, say, millet-based milks.
Okay, so these are milks, I think it's important for you to identify some of the end parameters. Like, what do you want your pH of your milk to be? Why do you want it to be a certain way? What do you want the Brix of your milk to be? And that basically becomes an indicator for certain qualitative sensory parameters, right? So when I talk about Brix, it's going to give me an indication of mouthfeel, thickness, and attributes like that. When I talk about, let's say, pH, it's going to give me an idea more from a functional stability perspective, and to a certain degree, flavor to a certain degree, especially from a milk perspective. So I would say, like, have a clear idea on what you want your endpoints to be, because that's going to help you with your formulation. And when it comes to, and to answer your question about how most of the folks are doing their work in the kitchen, honestly, all of GoodMylk's products have been developed in a home kitchen. We don't have an R&D space. So everything that we've done has been on a kitchen scale using fairly basic equipment. We have been scrappy in that way in terms of how we spend our CapEx. So it's definitely possible. Obviously, a little bit of reading and experience helps you anticipate certain issues, so you understand how the translation happens. But I think really understanding from literature, especially like water absorption capacities, because I haven't done as much research on millets as honestly I would have, but I'm guessing that this participant has done a lot more. But really taking the specific millet that you're using, understanding what are the starches, sugars that are present, what is the water absorption capacity of them, and basically playing around with all of that should put you in a better place where you'll understand that at the end, when you have these specific parameters of pH, Brix, and viscosity for that matter, if rheometers are a little bit more hard to come by, but then you can gauge it. You can probably put it in some kind of a range or use a Bostwick and things like that. So if you identify those, once you take it to a manufacturer, he'll be able to tell you, hey, this pH range becomes very difficult for us. This Brix is too high. It's going to cause fouling in my equipment. So I think, just narrow down some of those parameters, be clear on it. And I think that will help you in your translation or scale up phase.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Anybody else would like to add here? Yeah, I think Spurti covered a lot of ground there. So are you adding something to this, Aboli? Cannot hear you. You're not even on mute, so not sure. Maybe you'll have to rejoin. I'm not sure. Can you try speaking? Yeah, just try rejoining. Maybe that would work. Okay, so I think till then, what questions Shubham had asked, I think about hurdle technology. So even if you're using multiple step processes to improve your texture, then at each point you have to really account for the cost of those equipment. Are they available? And then again, basic calculations like how much electricity is being used by those equipments. What does that cost coming? You like unit economics, right? And we'll learn some of this in one of our workshops coming soon. But basically, you have to really think about all the ingredients, all the energy sources, all the processing steps. Again, like the availability of those equipments, availability of, I don't know, power sources, the cost of electricity, like things I've already mentioned. Is that what you meant, Shubham? Like, is that your question? Am I getting it correct in terms of controlling costing? So it's a very complex question, like you can understand, Shubham, yeah? And you'll have to really plan for each of those steps then. And it's not like as simple as just using UHT or some specific machines, and you're really thinking of a lot of different things. So it can be complex, but at the same time, it might be helping you achieve something at a lower cost. So just think of all of those things. Great. Any other questions anyone would like to ask from all the teams?
Hello, Shardul. I had one last question, if I may get the chance. One last question that to all the experts here only. It's a very general kind of a question. It's not anything technical. I'm just asking, like, since all of the people here are new and they're not very old in the market, and so like, and we are not seeing much advertisements also of these products. So how are these brands thinking of reaching, and do you think any consumer mindset change is happening in the market? What are you guys doing to change that? And suppose if I want my product to reach the rural like markets, village markets, normal grocery kirana wala jo stores, that market I'm talking, people who are not knowledgeable about the brands and the technology of vegan and whatever it is, what are these people envisioning? I want to understand that. Like, मुझे ये psychology थोड़ा समझना है कि कैसे reach करें हम लोग, वही मुझे मेरा
Spurti,
question.
yeah, that's a good question. Like Spurti, maybe you can talk about Bharat versus India, tier 1, tier 2, your different go-to-market strategies, something around
Sure.
that.
I mean, that's the million-dollar question that everyone's trying to answer and find a simple answer to, right? And I think it really, I think the first step is really understanding which consumers you're catering to. That is very, very important. So you mentioned rural folks in the rural areas. Now, when we're talking about, and I don't know when you mean rural, do you mean agricultural, or do you actually just mean like tier 2 or tier 3 cities? Because they fall into very different buckets. But I think once you identify who your consumers are, which target group they fall into in terms of age, in terms of lifestyle habits, etc., a lot of this mapping can be done. Like that's what marketing folks are really good at. You build out a target persona, and then that is the psychology that you want to try and understand, right? So for us, it's mostly an age group of, let's say, 25 to 40-year-olds. Those are our core age group people who are using it. They're mostly smaller households. You never see large families using GoodMylk products, at least at the start. It's always one or two people who start using it. Then maybe the family embraces it or maybe not. So I think that, you know, for us, the way we have approached it, at least, again, like it's one way of doing it, not the only way, is that we have decided to really cater to our loyalists, right? Like who are folks who are looking for these products first? What are the pain points? How can we solve for the pain points that they have? So they became our core focus group, and we've solved for their problems first. Now, as that core group basically expands and spreads, we're hearing different types of feedback that we're trying to incorporate into our product or into our customer service experience. So I think when you talk about tapping into the psychology, it is hard. It requires a lot of trial and experimentation, but also marketing today, because a lot of it is done digitally, helps you get more metrics than you probably did before. So there's a lot of A/B testing you can do with your products. There's a lot of tools that you can actually tap into to give you an insight of whether the marketing strategies that you're using to communicate with your consumer, to make them believe about the benefits of your products, etc., is working or not. There are tools that you can apply to actually get some of those answers.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Just adding a little bit to that from Abhishek's session earlier today as well about Good Dot, their approach in marketing to Bharat versus metro cities in India and Mumbai and Bangalore markets. Just price and taste is the most important thing, I feel.
Yeah.
People are not really gonna bother a lot as long as you can claim that it's as nutritious or probably equivalent or getting there in terms of nutrition and protein availability as compared to regular milk. And then again, one more very key factor that I think people have worked in villages, we used to work on milk supply chains, is the fat content, because that's how they get the bhav, rate of their milk. So that is usually a great indicator of, I don't know, how rich the quality of milk is. So I don't know, Spurti, any perspectives there, like how can we make it more fatty and rich in its taste?
I
Do
mean,
you
there
agree
obviously
with what I've
that's.
said?
I don't think so, Shardul, actually, because I think when we're talking about the rural folks, right, the pain points that they have is very different. So I really don't think that their barrier for choosing milk versus a plant-based milk is going to be fat content, right? It's a lot to do with cultural context. It's a lot to do with religion. It's a lot to do with affordability. You mentioned price and taste, and I really do agree that those are the two cornerstones of any food product company. That's a non-negotiable. But I think I really think we're a little far away from a point where we can really bring rural folks on board, because we just don't have our infrastructure in place where we can make it affordable. So I think what I would, and I'm going to digress a little in the sense that if we're talking about bang for your buck in nutrition, I would choose other nutrition sources that basically give them what they want, that's more value added for the money that they're spending. But I really think for some of the plant-based products and these value-added processed plant-based products that we are looking at to replace with certain functionalities, I think they're going to be fairly urban, tier 1, tier 2 cities. Tier 2 cities also do pretty well. I recently received some data from our sales on e-commerce platforms, and our products are going to 27 states as of last month, which is incredible, right? It's like the reach, even I couldn't believe. I'm like, who from these northeastern states even know about GoodMylk? Why are they buying our product? So I feel like you want to target that educated, conscious consumer first, make sure that your product is really good, then with scale achieve economics, and then spread out to the bottom areas. Having said that though, at GoodMylk, we have explored working with like an Akshaya Patra Foundation, which supports the midday meal scheme. So there, what some of the thoughts that we had, again, this is completely in the works, but some of the thoughts is, if we think about what can people gain most nutrition from, would be our peanut curd, actually, not as much our milk. So like, can we donate this to Akshaya Patra? Can we help promote plant-based foods, but also ensure it's a lot more rich and from a nutrition perspective, where they're not missing out? So I think it's a tricky question, and I don't think narrowing it down to certain parameters is going to be the answer.
Yeah. Like with everything, it depends, and you have to really do a lot of research out there. Varun, would you like to just round up the session by maybe saying a few things about all the questions and themes we covered today? Varun Deshpande, that is not VG.
Unless VG wants to go as well. No, yeah, thank you, Shardul. Thank you so much, Spurti. Thank you, Aboli. Thank you, Pankaj. And of course, thank you, Siddharth, as well. This was very interesting, very sophisticated questions. Really, really wonderful to listen in as an observer. I did have one thing to say to that last question as well. I think the question should be flipped on its head to move away from the idea of mindset change towards just thinking through, as Spurti said, what kind of latent demand exists that can only be gauged by understanding the pain points of customers. The great news is all the research we're doing and have done indicates that latent demand exists, right? So everywhere that we have asked, and some entrepreneurs have also asked, we're getting the same numbers over and over again, which means the experiments we are running are replicating. There is an early adopter cohort, and then there is a broader base of consumption. The early adopter cohort might eat for the planet a little bit more than the broader base of consumption. And for everyone, price and taste is the major underpinning factor that matters, right? So I think these are things that we say over and over again, but I can tell you that these points are being validated over and over again in the market through our research as well, which is great. So yeah, thank you so much, everyone. And I look forward to seeing more from everyone over the next weeks.
Awesome. We'll just take one last question. Nandita, would you like to quickly ask a question? And we'll wrap up the session then. Nandita Da.
Hello.
Yeah, hi, go on.
Hi. Actually, I wanted to ask that that ragi, when it is used for fermentation, if we use starter culture for the fermentation, then will it give the dahi texture, that is like a clear cut texture when we cut it with spoon? Will it give it a texture of that? Because as it is very gelatinous, when we heat it, it may cause gel, it may bring up some gel like structure, as we have already seen, like ragi porridges are available. So if we use ragi for dahi, then is that like what we can do for overcoming that thing?
So you know what, a lot of the questions like this, no one has the actual answer unless they've experimented with that specific mix of ingredients. I think Siddharth or Spurti can provide you with a theoretical answer about properties that you're going to look for, which might give you more gelation or might give you more of the kind of stability that you're looking for. Siddharth, do you want to answer that? Like theoretically, of course.
Again, as Varun said, the answer really depends. I would say, I think Spurti mentioned this, right? I mean, when you're saying, can I make dahi? Like, what are you really targeting, right? So what is the viscosity or like the cut or, specific textural and flavor parameters in dahi that you're targeting for? And how close are you with respect to your product made from ragi to those parameters? So one of the ways, like dahi has a very clean cut, right? Once you cut dahi, and this is, I know, like this is not very analytical way of saying it, but then you can just cut your product with ragi and see if it is clean or if it is like a starchy sort of a cut that is coming. Secondly, you can check the consistency in terms of like how viscous is the product becoming, and that could be another parameter. Then in terms of taste too, like, I believe, I don't know what are the specific flavor parameters in dahi, but then it is pretty neutral, maybe slightly fermented. And then you could, kind of quantify these parameters on a hedonic scale to see how your ragi product is looking like. So based on these, you could make specific arrangements to your ingredients or to your processing methods and see how close you can get to your final product. And there are also some textural equipments available like rheometers and etc. for you to go the more analytical route.
And Siddharth,
Okay.
can you just say a little bit about binders and ingredients that just add a little bit more of that structure building and that gelation?
Yeah, I mean, typically, so dahi is acid-induced gelation, right? So you have your culture essentially fermenting, uh, and fermentation happening, and that's how you're getting that sort of gelation in a dahi product. So in a ragi product, you need to understand what sort of gelation are you getting. Is it heat induced? Or if you have the starter cultures, what you're using, are they giving the right sort of gelation, what you need? Or do you need to add any additional gums or etc. to kind of contribute to that? A lot of plant-based dairy products, use starter cultures to get their yogurts, but they also rely a lot on hydrocolloids to get that proper gel-like consistency. So you could, it's just a balance to see, what gets you to the final endpoint. And
Awesome.
yeah.
Yeah. Go on.
Thank you, sir.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's about it. We're already like few minutes over, so I won't keep our panelists for long. I think this was really, really helpful session. Such beautiful insights. I'm loving the questions that are coming in every session. And I think we're really improving our own bar of the kind of questions we received in phase one versus now. It's definitely improving. And I'm sure as people are thinking more about these things in the next few couple of months while they're developing their own products, maybe you go back to college, you work on proposals. I know of so many teams who could not make it to phase three, but they're actually pursuing their proposals now. So at the end of the day, it's all about successfully developing your product if you want to launch it in the market, regardless of the competition, right? So great insights, practical insights, I think going to be very helpful for everyone. And Spurti, Siddharth, Pankaj, and Aboli, thank you so much once again for joining us. If anybody has, if it's possible for you to switch on your videos, just quickly do that. We'll take a quick photo for this session as a memory, and then we'll go on about it. All right, Varun's there. Participants. All right. I see a lot of faces now, so that's cool. All right, I'm done. So thank you once again for joining us, and bye guys. Have a great weekend starting tomorrow, and we'll see you
Thank
soon
you.
in more sessions.
Thank you, everyone, and good luck to all the participants.
Thank you, Shardul. Good luck to all the participants. See you soon.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Good luck.
Thank you so much. Bye again.